All right, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is, wherever in the world it is that you are. Welcome once more to another live stream of Alexandra Mayer's Live, page by page reading and commentary of the Bible, Modern English Version. So this morning, this lovely weekend, we will be jumping into Genesis 17. The covenant of circumcision. Yes. Now, this might be a little bit of a squeamish thought for some of you. It's an element of life that quite a few men nowadays have undergone, but may not remember exactly, being that generally people are circumcised when they're babies. But this is an interesting chapter of the Bible. So let's go ahead and get into it. And before I forget, please remember that before the end of this month, I am going to try my best to do an audio live listening party of the Book of Enoch. There's an audio book that I would love to listen to and commentate on live of the Book of Enoch with many of you. So make sure you subscribe to my channel so you know when that will happen. I will most likely post the date of that occurring on my community tab, um, probably toward the end of this coming week. Okay, so here we go. The covenant of circumcision. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am Almighty God. Walk before me and be blameless. And I will make my covenant between you and me, and will exceedingly multiply you. Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, As for me, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer will your name be called Abram, but your name will be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. So let's go ahead and pause right there because remember, if you've been listening to Genesis 1 through 16 so far, and you've been reading along with me, Abram thought he wasn't going to have any kids. You know, he's been given wealth by God, he's been given respect. You know, his peers respect him, they admire him, he's accomplished a lot, but he's never had any children. The woman that he married, whose name is Sarai, for some reason she wasn't able to conceive. She even went as far as to offer her maid, Hagar, to him, who did conceive, but Hagar got an attitude with Sarai, and some things had to be worked out. God had to send an angel to smooth that over to an extent. But yeah, so Abram thought he wasn't going to ever have any kids or anything. He seemed to have reached a certain level of peace with that. At least he didn't think he was going to have any kids via the traditional method, you know, with his wife, Sarai. But God has some surprises for him in store, as you will see as we continue to read. No longer will your name be called Abram, but your name will be Abraham. For I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and your descendants after you. All the land of Canaan, where you live now as strangers, I will give to you and to your descendants for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. So basically, what we've kind of learned here is that God wanted to test Abram, who now is Abraham, and, check out his loyalty and everything. And Abram did a good job. which is why he gets to be Abraham now and is going to have a ton of descendants. Then God said to Abraham, "As for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. Every male throughout every generation that is 8 days old shall be circumcised, whether born in your household or bought with money from a foreigner who is not your descendant. He who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money must be circumcised. My covenant shall be in your flesh as an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant." So God was pretty strict about that. God needed that circumcision to take place. And some people have theorized over the years that the circumcision added to a certain level of cleanliness within the males as well, which would have added to the longevity of both the males and the females. So there's a spiritual standpoint to look at this from, along with a health or scientific standpoint to look at this from. Then God said to Abraham, "As for Sarai, your wife, you will not call her name Sarai, but her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and also give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she will be the mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her." So it looks like things are going to work out for Sarai. Good for her, because she went through a little something there with Hagar. Sarai tried, but she's only human. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, "Shall a child be born to a man that is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child?" Abraham said to God, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before you." Then God said, "No, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant, and with his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly." So both his sons are going to be okay. And it's interesting that Abraham, aka Abram, is worried about ages. Maybe he wasn't thinking at that point, or maybe he just didn't know. But Adam, which occurred not too long before Abram, lived to be up to almost 1,000 years old. The lifespan had just recently been cut a bit shorter in the generation since Abraham came along. People have been living for quite some time. I think the lifespans were substantially cut after the flood. Maybe the human form and the biology had been perfected to an extent to where people didn't need to live so long. But, you know, in the days of Noah and before that, people were living to into their hundreds. So, it wasn't that big of a thing, really, for Abraham and Sarai to have their first kid when they were around 100. All right, so where are we? Um, all right. Then God said, "No, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant, and with his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. He will be the father of 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this set time next year." Then he stopped talking with Abraham, and God went up from him. Then Abraham took Ishmael, his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were bought with his money, every male amongst the men of Abraham's household, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that very same day as God had said to him. All right, so things are going to work out, at least up to this point, with Ishmael. But there is some differentiation between the lineages from Ishmael versus Isaac. And it's important to keep in mind that Ishmael's mother was the maid of Sarai, aka Sarah, was not his initial wife. It was very important to God, it seems, for Abram, aka Abraham, to have a lineage specifically from his initial wife, Sarai, aka Sarah. And when you really think about it, this is kind of a long reach, but it's just a thought I had. But maybe something was going on in those days to where God purposely prevented Sarai, aka Sarah, from conceiving. Maybe there was some sort of disease going on, maybe there was germs, maybe for some reason she needed to be preserved to have a child later instead of at that earlier stage. Because remember, God has a plan, there's a reason for everything. His son Ishmael was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Abraham and Ishmael were circumcised on the same day. All the men born in Abraham's household or bought from foreigners were circumcised with him. All right, so that's it for today. I thought that that was actually a rather educational chapter of the Bible, Genesis 17. So we learned a bit about the history of circumcision. We understand now why spiritually it's quite the um, staple of an element within certain spiritual paths and religions. So tomorrow we will be getting into Genesis 18, Isaac's birth foretold. And remember, when I do these live streams, which will generally be in the morning, you can feel free to participate in the live chat should you decide to do so. If you are someone who is a follower of the Christian spiritual path. And that's about it for today. So have a wonderful morning, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.